Yo, so I've been doing some thinking, so being in my head can be a little frustrating sometimes. So I'm sitting there working on a new video about a race or whatever, and I'm listening to a podcast. They mentioned 17th and 18th century surgery and how crazy it was. And then 4 days later, I am a self-proclaimed expert on the subject. I've spent all of my time, free and spoken for, thinking about and researching this subject. So I do tend to do this quite often actually, but I think I have found a cure. What is that, you might ask? So it is basically having an end goal. So whenever I get all of this crap up in here and I research it for a few days, if I put an end goal to it, I seem to be able to relinquish whatever it is inside of me to the next person, if that makes any sense at all. So it's kind of like a horror movie. Right at the end of a horror movie, you know, that you've got the guy running from whatever it is that is chasing him, and as soon as it about catches him, you press render, you're done, you're good to go. Okay, well, let's move on. And that's why I have to put a date on this stuff. If I don't just push some of these videos out, I will spend eons trying to make them work. For me, anyway. And guys, I am not here to debate which brand is better than another. Everybody has an opinion. This is not like a Ford Chevy kind of thing. But there is facts. The facts are there is a hierarchy to these bike brands. You're going to have the big guys, the big three, tier 1, tier 2. People call them tier 3, but I call them junk. That's the only brand that I think across the board brands, I should say. That's the only brands I should say across the board everyone has the same opinion about. So we have to talk about the hierarchy of bicycle brands. Because I always have people that come and ask me what differentiates one bike from another. Now we can go into details about fit, about how light it is, all of that jazz that people seem to get caught up with. Most of that is marketing. What you really need to look at is the company itself, how they treat their customers, their reputation, and their manufacturing process. That's what separates big brands from small brands. Now I'm not going to cover every single brand. You know, if you want to know more, you can always ask. I've researched plenty of these brands, but this is going to be more of a guide. So whenever somebody says it is a tier 2 brand or one of the big 3, you kind of have a better understanding of what they're talking about. So this is the top of the top. We're going to start there, work our way down. This is the big 3. This is the big 3, or the big boys, whatever you want to call them. So this is Giant, Trek, Specialized, Merida. Those are the biggest bike brands in the world at the moment. This can always change, keep that in mind. Just look at Schwinn. They were the only thing for a long time. So this category is for the brands that have the highest sales volume and make a lot, if not all, of their product. In my opinion, Giant is the biggest because they do in fact make the most bikes for other brands. They also made a ton of Treks, for instance. And they even used to make a lot of the Specialized before Merida bought, I think it's 49%. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Merida now owns 49% of Specialized. Merida is much bigger in Europe, and they don't really bring a lot of their bikes, or if any, to the US strictly because they have Specialized here. So everybody knows about the big three. They know how they operate. Giant is the biggest. They might not be the biggest in the US, but as far as production of bicycles, they make the most bikes. All right, so let's move on to where things start to get a little bit more interesting. Tier 1 brands. Tier 1 is reserved for the more niche brands that have their own research and design and their own quality control, but they do not make their bikes. So each of these tiers, they actually kind of align with sales. You can't have your own R&D team and quality control if you're not selling enough bicycles, so keep that in mind. But they do not make their own bicycles. A lot of the fancy Italian brands are lumped into this, like Pinarello and Bianchi. They both do not make their bikes. Bianchi, I don't know about Pinarello, but Bianchi does have this sweet bike that is still made in Italy. It's a steel frame. Every part on it's Italian, and it is beautiful. It's not one that you want to go buy and race it. It is a retro, awesome piece just to have in your stable. So these brands will do all of their research and design and go to a company like Giant and say, make us this frame with these specs and this geometry. Giant will crank out however many frames that they want, and then Pinarello or whoever will paint them in Italy, hang the parts on it, slap a made in Italy sticker on it, and there you have it. You have a made in Italy bike. So I know in Italy and in a lot of Europe, it is a percentage of labor that goes into a product, and that's how you can say it's made in Italy. So the bike frame doesn't have to be made in Italy, but if the painting happens there, the hanging of parts happen there, that kind of stuff, you can actually say it's made in Italy, and it technically is not. A lot of these companies though, Pinarello and Bianchi included, use Giant to crank out their frames. And they know that Giant makes the best carbon. Doesn't always mean Giant has the best bike. I think they have a great product, but at least these brands do their own R&D. So they could potentially have better research and design. Tier 1 brands are where my heart lies. I love these brands. And so this also leads to, these brands do their quality control. If you go onto the internet and you buy like Alibaba Express and you find something that says it's a Pinarello, same bike, we've had bikes like that in, they are not the same. Most of them are maybe the same mold, an old mold, but maybe the same mold, but it is not the same carbon layup. And we have seen them break. Stay away from those bikes. Coming down another step, you got the tier 2 brands. This is where I think stuff gets really interesting. So they do not do research and design. For the most part, they don't do R&D. I can't say 100% of these companies don't, but for the most part, they don't. So basically what happens, let's say the new Anthem's coming out, correct? Full carbon, those carbon molds are very expensive and they last, I think, 4 years. They could be 5, but I know they last 4 years. To get to that product, Giant will do, revisions. Say they have 10 molds before this. This is the 11th mold that they have made to get the bike that they want. Those previous 10 molds are very expensive and they don't just throw them away. And this is where these brands, the tier 2 brands, come in. Those brands, we call them cookie cutter brands. So basically they will go to Giant and go, we haven't had a new bike in 4 years, or we haven't had a new full suspension mountain bike in 4 years. What do you have, Giant? They will show them all of the molds that they did not use, and then Raleigh or Jameis or whoever will pick one out and then market the crap out of it, and then you've got a brand spanking new bike. That doesn't necessarily mean that bike is bad. It is just, you just know that it is a leftover, or it is something that a bigger company did not want for one reason or another. So we've covered tier 1, tier 2, and the big 3. When you move on to tier 3, things get a little bit more straightforward. You don't have to do as much research. These are the brands that are not even considered bicycles. So all of your big brands, they go through a certain safety standard. Most of them, unless it is a consumer direct brand, require a bicycle mechanic to build the bike. If you're a Giant dealer, you're not allowed to just give somebody a brand new bike in a box and say, go have fun, build it yourself. You actually have to build it, offer a warranty with it, that sort of thing. When it comes to these tier 3 brands, they don't offer anything. These are your $150 Walmart bikes, and they are not even considered actually a bicycle. That's not just through my opinion. I guess by definition they have 2 wheels and a chain, but they're not considered a bicycle, they're considered a toy. That's why you can go get one off the shelf and go hurt yourself. If you really want to have fun,
I do this every single time I go into Walmart, Target, anywhere like that. Just look at their bicycles. I always at least find one where the fork is on backwards, the handlebars aren't straight, the brakes aren't adjusted. I mean, they literally slap them together. Everybody knows what these brands are. This is gonna be like your Kents, you know, Mongoose, all of those really tiny brands that used to be a bigger brand. Mongoose was huge back in the day. So, and these are the brands that I recommend you staying away from. There's a lot of people that think that they can just buy one of the Walmart bikes to see if they even enjoy cycling. In my opinion, when you do this, it's gonna put a bad taste in your mouth. When you go to Whitewater Center and the first ride you do, you break your chain off, you're not gonna wanna come back and ride. You're gonna think that all bikes are that way. So please, I don't care what you do. You can buy a used bike, whatever. Just don't buy a big department store bicycle as your first bike to see if you enjoy cycling. I want everyone to enjoy cycling. So that's about all that I have for you today. It is the Holy Week of cycling and I am super excited. So I'm gonna go get pumped with some more race watching and I will see you all in the next one.